Every so often, a country makes a move that almost nobody notices until it starts reshaping an entire region's economy. That's what's happening in Morocco right now. For decades, North Africa was largely seen as a region built on farming, fishing and tourism. It mainly exported raw materials and agricultural goods like Moroccan phosphates or Algerian oil, and sat largely outside global manufacturing supply chains. But over the past 10 to 15 years, Morocco has quietly gone in a different direction, turning itself into North Africa's first true industrial economy. Today, it's the second largest car producer on the continent, accounting for more than 500,000 vehicles a year. Its biggest port now handles close to 10 million containers annually, ranking among the world's busiest. Companies in the aerospace sector have come to Morocco to set up new factories that once would have gone to Eastern Europe, Turkey, or even Asia instead. And none of this happened by accident. Morocco didn't stumble into industrial success. It used the advantages it had and built an economy around them. In a region often defined by political instability and sudden shocks, Morocco became the safe bet. It made itself predictable, dependable, and incredibly easy to trade with. That didn't mean there were no setbacks. Morocco's economic growth has been uneven, with benefits concentrated and not everyone feeling the gains right away, but the overall direction has remained steady. And that consistency is what global manufacturers look for. So, as always, we've got some important questions to answer. How did Morocco pull this off so quickly? Why are manufacturers choosing Morocco now instead of the places they once relied on? And can Morocco turn this momentum into something bigger, or will its success depend on whether it can remain Europe's affordable workshop? You're on your way to work. You want to check in on the project you just wrapped up on your computer, but you can't find it anywhere. Endlessly searching on your phone with no sign of it anywhere. We have all been there. This is why we use AnyDesk. AnyDesk lets you remotely access your computer from anywhere, whether you're pulling up a file, troubleshooting a system, or even managing complex workflows you just can't run on a laptop. With our fully remote team, it's essential. We use AnyDesk for anything from video editing to running complex dashboards. It works on any device, so no matter what your team uses, it just connects seamlessly. And thanks to its powerful codec technology, connection speed is never an issue. It's free for personal use, and there are flexible plans for teams like ours. Give AnyDesk a try, the link is in the description. Morocco's industrial rise might look sudden from the outside, but nothing about it was improvised. In the late 2000s, the country made a clear break with its past. Instead of relying on agriculture, tourism, low-value exports, or waiting for foreign investors to eventually take interest, Morocco adopted a proactive industrial strategy. Their goal? To build the conditions that global manufacturers need before they arrive. That shift began with the Emergence Plan and was formalised through the National Pact for Industrial Emergence, which focused on building industrial ecosystems where factories, suppliers, logistics and skills would all live side by side. Across the country, Morocco developed dedicated industrial zones with specialised infrastructure, tailored regulations and direct access to logistics networks. Today, more than 150 industrial zones span over 12,000 hectares, hosting around 10,000 firms across manufacturing, logistics, services and technology. One of the first and most important was the Tangier Free Zone, inaugurated in 1999. Over time, it attracted more than 500 companies and over $670 million in investment, producing everything from automotive components and aeronautics parts to textiles, agribusiness, electronics and software services. Some kilometres away, Tangier Automotive City opened in 2013 and has now expanded into an 800-hectare automotive ecosystem. The place is home to 150 companies and over 20,000 direct jobs, which orbit around assembly, stamping, wiring and parts manufacturing. What sets these two industrial zones apart is that they sit very close to one of Morocco's greatest assets, Tangier Med. Now Africa's largest port, it handles close to 10 million containers a year, ranking among the world's busiest container ports. More importantly, it's one of the most connected ports on the planet, with regular shipping links to over 180 ports across more than 70 countries. While much of Africa still grapples with congested, less integrated ports, Tangier Med places most major European ports less than 3 days away by sea. For companies operating inside the zones, that proximity cuts hours from shipping times. Goods roll out of factories and straight onto global trade routes. That's the difference between an industrial zone that attracts global manufacturers and one that never scales. Across Africa, many industrial parks struggled because factories were built far inland, where long truck journeys, border delays and port congestion made reliable production impossible. In the 2010s, for example, Ethiopia built large industrial parks like Hawassa to become manufacturing hubs, but the flagship zone sat nearly 900 kilometres from the port of Djibouti. This eroded the labour cost advantage and disrupted just-in-time production for apparel suppliers, including those producing for brands like H&M. That lesson shaped how Morocco structured its entire industrial map. Instead of concentrating production inland, it stretched industrial zones along the coast, keeping factories close to ports and export routes. Moving south from Tangier, the Kenitra Atlantic Free Zone, established around 2011, became the next pillar of that strategy. It's the industrial belt feeding Stellantis' Peugeot and Opel assembly lines, with suppliers producing seats, electronics and structural components nearby. Closer to Casablanca, the Mid-Park Industrial Zone emerged as a high-precision cluster for aerospace manufacturing, while Tetuan Park in the north built its own ecosystem for light manufacturing, trade, services and logistics. Taken together, these zones function like industrial cities. Companies enjoy low operating costs, simplified regulations and customs-free exports, but the real advantage is the way everything is connected. Training centres sit next to supplier workshops, cold storage sits next to customs offices, and highways and rail lines run directly into ports. If you're a multinational corporation trying to assemble cars, aircraft components, or wiring harnesses, that infrastructure can shorten production and delivery timelines, letting you scale faster and cheaper than in many competing countries. Once the zones proved the concept, the policy focus shifted to scaling what worked through incentives, infrastructure, and workforce development. Through the National Pact for Industrial Emergence and subsequent plans, especially the Industrial Acceleration Plans from 2014 to 2020, and again from 2021 to 2025, the government's goal evolved. It was no longer just to attract factories, but to make sure they could expand quickly, operate efficiently, and stay competitive over time. To achieve that, Morocco partnered directly with industry, expanding industrial zones, offering tax exemptions, and most importantly, building training programs tailored directly to the specific needs of each sector. Renault created a dedicated training centre in Tangier to prepare workers for assembly line and quality control roles. Safran helped establish the Institut des Métiers de l'Aéronautique, a specialised school that trains technicians for engine components, composites, and aircraft interiors. And Boeing, through agreements with the Moroccan government, supported workforce development programs tied to the aerospace cluster. Training wasn't limited to heavy industry though. Near Rabat, Technopolis was designed as Morocco's tech campus, hosting R&D firms, microelectronics labs, media companies, and offshoring operations. So far, about $307 million has been invested in the Technopolis campus, which offers plug-and-play offices and hiring incentives that subsidise thousands of high-skilled jobs across resident firms, with training grants of up to roughly $5,900 per employee. Morocco also invested heavily in applied research and advanced skills through Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, UM6P, which the media has described as Morocco's Silicon Valley. Built near Marrakesh and backed by the state-owned phosphate giant OCP, UM6P was designed as a research-driven institution tightly linked to industry. Today, the university works directly with international partners and private firms, focusing on fields Morocco sees as strategic for its continued growth. Fields like engineering, data science, renewable energy, agriculture technology, and materials science. Alongside this focus on research and skills, from 2014 to 2020, the industrial acceleration plans pushed heavily on infrastructure. Ports were expanded and new projects were launched to increase capacity across the country. More recently, on the Mediterranean coast, Nada West Med is being developed as a deep-water port and logistics platform designed to relieve pressure on Tangier Med while anchoring industrial growth in eastern Morocco. The project includes a free industrial zone and large-scale energy and storage infrastructure, reinforcing Morocco's port system rather than concentrating all risk in a single hub. Further south, the Dakhla Atlantic Port Project aims to equip Morocco's southern provinces with a multifunctional logistics gateway and to strengthen trade links with West Africa. And on land, mobility has improved just as quickly. Morocco's highway network expanded from less than 100 kilometres in 1999 to over 2,177 kilometres today, linking industrial zones directly to ports and major cities. That already puts Morocco among the most extensive highway networks in Africa, larger than those of Tunisia and far denser than most sub-Saharan economies where logistics still rely heavily on single-lane roads. And the build-out isn't finished. The government plans to push the network past 3,000 kilometres by 2030, extending high-capacity roads deeper into inland and southern regions. Rail infrastructure was upgraded too. The Al Barak high-speed rail line opened in 2018, cutting travel time between Tangier and Casablanca from nearly 5 hours to just over 2. In connecting the country's two most important industrial corridors, Morocco dramatically reduced friction for business, labour and logistics. And it isn't stopping here. The government has announced plans to extend the high-speed rail network south toward Marrakesh and eventually Agadir. This will turn Al Barak into the backbone of a national transport system with a goal to link more industrial zones, ports and population centres into the same fast, predictable corridor. And Morocco has its eyes on the skies as well. Through its Airports 2030 plan, it aims to more than double national airport capacity. This will support tourism, but also high-value trade, executive mobility, and time-sensitive cargo, especially as the country prepares to co-host the 2030 FIFA World Cup with Spain and Portugal. Now, layered on top of this physical infrastructure sits Morocco's trade architecture. The country holds free trade agreements with the European Union, the United States, Turkey, and dozens of African and Arab partners. For European firms in particular, manufacturing in Morocco is almost like manufacturing inside the EU, but with lower labour costs, faster permitting, and cheaper land. Under the EU-Morocco Association Agreement, most industrial tariffs are removed, meaning a car built in Kenitra can arrive in Europe without the usual frictions faced by non-EU producers. But Morocco's biggest advantage is the one it never built: geography. It sits just 14 kilometres from Spain, close enough that some ferries cross the Strait of Gibraltar in under an hour. More than 100,000 ships pass through that strait every year, making it one of the busiest shipping corridors on Earth. From Morocco's ports, there are direct shipping routes into France, Portugal, Spain, Italy, and the UK, all reachable far faster than from Asia. That location gives Morocco something most distant competitors cannot replicate: extremely short, extremely safe supply lines into Europe. Add to that a level of political stability rare in North Africa. While much of the region was shaken by revolutions, civil wars, and repeated government collapses after the Arab Spring, Morocco avoided regime breakdown and maintained policy continuity throughout the 2010s. That consistency, along with long-term economic policies that haven't swung dramatically with each new government, turned Morocco into what investors crave most: a low-risk environment where factories can operate without disruption. Put simply, Morocco is close enough to Europe, cheaper than Europe, and without the geopolitical risk and long transit times of Asia. But even with all of those advantages, there's one constraint that has threatened to break Morocco's ongoing industrial growth. Factories don't just need cheap labour and good logistics, they need power. And in much of North Africa, electricity is either unreliable, expensive, or both. In Egypt, for example, rolling blackouts linked to gas shortages in 2023 hit industrial cities, forcing factories to halt production for hours at a time. Morocco tackled that risk early by investing heavily in renewables, and while the sector is still modest in GDP terms, it has become one of the country's most strategically important industries. Over the past decade, Morocco has committed more than $360 million to building large-scale solar and wind capacity. The most visible symbol of that strategy is Noor Ouarzazate, an area that used to be an empty stretch of desert but now holds one of the largest solar power plants in the world. It provides Morocco with a reliable source of industrial-scale electricity. Along the Atlantic coast, massive wind farms followed, feeding power directly into the national grid. For manufacturers, this mattered more than headlines about green energy. Energy costs are one of the few variables manufacturers can't easily control once a factory is built. By stabilising electricity supply and reducing exposure to fossil fuel price swings, Morocco removed a major source of uncertainty, making it far easier for factories to commit, expand, and operate over the long term. But that didn't mean factories showed up evenly across the economy. Morocco attracted them in a handful of sectors where being close to Europe, cheap, and reliable delivered the biggest economic returns. The first sector was cars. Today, Morocco is the second largest car producer in Africa, assembling more than 550,000 vehicles a year. It still trails South Africa, the continent's long-standing automotive hub, but it's closing the gap fast. And unlike South Africa, which exports roughly 68% of its output, around 80% of Moroccan production is shipped abroad, mostly to European markets. Renault was the first major automaker to commit, opening its Tangier plant in 2012. It quickly became one of the company's most efficient factories globally, producing 1 million vehicles within its first few years of operation, and supplying small and mid-sized vehicles directly to Europe. From there, Morocco's new industrial model snowballed. Stellantis built its Kenitra plant in 2019, which produces Peugeot and Opel models for European markets. It later expanded the plant to include electric vehicles like the Citroën Ami, turning Morocco into part of its EV supply chain. Around these plants, dense clusters of suppliers popped up, making everything from seats and wiring harnesses to dashboards and exhaust systems, often just minutes away from the final assembly line. That matters because a modern car contains around 15,000 parts. In a fragmented supply chain, each border crossing, delay, or customs check adds cost. Morocco's zones collapse that complexity. Parts are made nearby, assembled nearby, and shipped out almost immediately. Also, as wages rise across Europe and even parts of Eastern Europe, Morocco has emerged as one of the cheapest places in the world to assemble a car at scale. On a per-vehicle basis, assembling a car in Morocco turns out to be cheaper than in Turkey, Romania, or Mexico, countries long considered the go-to low-cost options. And once Morocco proved it could handle complex, just-in-time manufacturing through cars, a second industry was ready for takeoff: aerospace. At first, that might seem surprising. Aircraft manufacturing is usually associated with rich, high-tech economies, but modern aircraft production is highly fragmented. High-value design and final assembly stay in places like the US and Europe. Meanwhile, a large share of the work, like wiring systems, composite parts, and fuselage sections, relies on precision manufacturing. And that type of work requires reliability and logistics more than cutting-edge research. Morocco offered exactly that. Today, the country is one of the fastest growing aerospace hubs in the world, with around 150 aerospace firms operating inside its borders. Suppliers linked to Boeing and Airbus manufacture fuselage components and wiring systems, Safran produces engine parts and interiors, and companies like Collins Aerospace and Stelia build interior components, many of which are shipped directly into European assembly lines. Aerospace exports now exceed $2 billion a year, and over time, Morocco is gradually increasing its share by moving from basic wiring into higher value aerospace manufacturing. And then there's one final sector that plays a critical role in Morocco's economy: mining, which centres on one of the most strategically important resources on Earth: phosphate rock. This rock is the source of phosphorus, a material essential for two things the global economy cannot function without: food and energy. Phosphorus is a key ingredient in fertiliser, and fertilisers support around half of global food production. Without phosphorus, global crop yields would collapse. Phosphates are also becoming critical for the energy transition. They're a core component of lithium iron phosphate batteries, which now make up roughly 30% of the global EV battery market and are increasingly used by companies like Tesla. The interesting part, though, is that unlike oil or gas, there is no substitute and no synthetic alternative. Phosphate can't be engineered in a lab or replaced by another material, it can only be mined where it exists. And Morocco controls roughly 70% of the world's known phosphate reserves. That gives Morocco a massive structural advantage. Through its state-owned group OCP, Morocco has built an entire industrial ecosystem around phosphates, from mining to processing to fertiliser production. Today, OCP is not only the world's largest phosphate fertiliser producer, but also Morocco's largest employer, with around 21,000 workers. This makes it one of the country's economic anchors, providing stable export revenues, foreign currency inflows, and giving the country room to invest in more complex sectors like manufacturing and technology. In 2020 alone, OCP generated $5.9 billion in revenue and accounted for roughly 1/5 of Morocco's total export earnings. And just as it did with cars and aerospace, Morocco concentrated infrastructure, processing capacity and logistics into a single massive hub. The result is Jorf Lasfar, a sprawling industrial complex on the Atlantic coast that has grown into the largest fertiliser production hub in the world. Taken together, this is what Morocco built: near-European manufacturing at scale, powered increasingly by renewables and anchored by control over a critical resource that underpins both global food security and the energy transition. Which brings us to the real question: can Morocco keep moving up the value chain, or will it remain a low-cost extension of Europe's factories? For decades, global supply chains were built around one simple idea: produce things as cheaply as possible, no matter how far away the factory was. But then COVID showed how fragile long-distance supply chains really are. The war in Ukraine exposed how geopolitical shocks can freeze entire industries overnight, and rising tensions with China made it clear that efficiency alone isn't enough anymore. For Europe in particular, this forced a rethink. The new priority became nearshoring, bringing production closer, shortening shipping routes, reducing dependence on Asia, and keeping supply chains inside politically friendly territory. And this is where Morocco fits almost perfectly. Over the past 2 decades, the country has maintained relative political stability, consistent economic policy, and a pattern of gradual reform. While neighbouring countries went through revolutions, civil wars, or repeated political breakdowns, Morocco remained broadly stable. Part of that stability is structural. Morocco is geographically insulated in a way few countries in the region are, shielded by the Atlas Mountains, buffered by the Sahara, and bordered by 2 seas. So, shocks don't spill over easily. But stability also comes from leverage. Through its control of phosphates, Morocco plays a quiet but powerful role in global food systems. Fertiliser exports generate revenue, but also raise agricultural yields, especially across sub-Saharan Africa, creating long-term partnerships and political goodwill. And crucially, change in Morocco has tended to be incremental. Policies evolved but rarely reversed overnight. Reforms came step by step, allowing institutions, businesses and investors to adjust without sudden disruptions. For global manufacturers, this stability means fewer surprises and fewer reasons to hesitate before committing billions to long-term factories. It's especially important for industries like aerospace, where certification, safety standards, and production take years and cost millions. Once a supplier is certified, companies want to know it will still be operating under the same rules 10 or 20 years down the line. But none of this means Morocco's model is risk-free. Its industrial success still depends heavily on European demand. A demand that is already under pressure as slowing growth across the EU has begun to weigh on manufacturing and exports. Climate risks are growing too. Repeated droughts are putting pressure on agriculture and water supplies, which matters not just for farmers, but for industry and energy as well. Then there's the most serious internal challenge: jobs. Despite rapid investment and modern infrastructure, Morocco has struggled to create enough meaningful employment for its young population, especially outside major cities. Overall, unemployment hovers around 13%, but among young people, it rises to well over 1/3. This gap between modernisation and inclusion is Morocco's core contradiction. The country has built world-class ports, factories and transport links, but the gains are unevenly distributed. Most foreign investment and high-value jobs are concentrated along the Casablanca-Rabat-Kenitra corridor, while inland and southern regions lag behind. The result is what some analysts call a two-speed Morocco, globally connected on one side, underemployed and frustrated on the other. And that tension has begun to surface politically. Youth-led protests over jobs and inequality have spread across major cities, echoing a broader pattern seen across the global south. For now, Morocco's stability is holding, but long-term resilience will depend on whether growth translates into opportunity at scale. There's one final challenge too. Right now, Morocco excels at assembly, components and mid-value manufacturing. That's a huge achievement, but to sustain growth over decades, it needs more than just production lines. It will also need more engineering, design and high-skill work at the local level. So this is Morocco's real test going forward. It isn't just about exporting more. It's about turning that success into broad-based employment, climbing further up the value chain, and making sure new opportunities are felt well beyond its main industrial corridors.